What if the person you trusted most, the one who promised to love you forever, had a secret so dark it would eventually destroy everything? What if the life you thought was picture perfect was actually a carefully constructed lie? And what if, when that lie started to unravel, the truth wasn't just heartbreaking, it was horrific? This isn't your typical cheating spouse story. This is about a woman who seemingly had it all: a devoted husband, two beautiful children, a new home, and a successful career. But beneath the polished surface was a crumbling marriage, an affair with a doctor, and a murder so cold, so calculated, it left even seasoned detectives speechless. This is the shocking, twisted case of Melanie McGuire, the suitcase killer. If you're still watching, you're already deep into the darkness with us, and trust me, we're just getting started. If you crave more twisted stories and unsettling truths, make sure to subscribe to The Evil Psyche, where we pull back the curtain on the most disturbing minds and crimes. Like the video, hit that bell and stay with me, because the next twist in this story, it's not what you think. Let's start in New Jersey, spring of 2004. Bill and Melanie McGuire looked like the type of couple you'd see in a family holiday card, smiling, happy, and living the American dream. Bill was 39, a dedicated computer programmer, the kind of guy who woke up early and worked late to make sure his family was comfortable. Melanie, 31, was a nurse at a prestigious fertility clinic. She was smart, put together, and well-liked by her co-workers. They had two little boys, a cozy apartment, and they'd just closed on their very first home, a beautiful house in Woodbridge, New Jersey. It seemed like everything was falling into place. But that's the thing about perfect pictures: you never see the cracks until it's too late. Behind closed doors, their marriage wasn't a love story. It was a battlefield. Bill was a gambler, not just poker nights with the boys. We're talking serious, high-stakes gambling. He blew through money they didn't have, and Melanie hated it. Melanie, on the other hand, wasn't exactly a saint either. She'd grown cold toward Bill, and she wasn't staying late at work because she loved her job. She was staying late because she was having an affair with Dr. Bradley Miller, a well-known, respected doctor at her clinic. The house was supposed to be a new beginning for them. But for Melanie, it wasn't a dream home, it was a prison. She didn't want to move into that house. She didn't want a new life with Bill. She wanted out. The question is, how far would she go to get that freedom? April 28, 2004, the day everything should have been perfect. Bill and Melanie signed the papers on their new house, but instead of celebrating, they argued. Loud. Neighbors would later recall hearing shouting from their apartment that night. Melanie later claimed Bill got physical with her, shoving her against a wall. She said she was terrified, that Bill lost control. The next morning, Melanie told friends and family that Bill had snapped. She said he grabbed his things, stormed out, and never came back. She wasted no time. That same day, she filed for a restraining order, telling the court Bill was abusive and dangerous. It seemed like a straightforward domestic violence case. A man gets violent, walks out, and disappears. But here's the thing: Bill wasn't the type to walk away from his kids. He loved those boys. So where did he really go? The truth wouldn't come out for over a week, and by then it was too late. May 5, 2004, Chesapeake Bay, Virginia. A fisherman spotted a large, dark suitcase bobbing in the water. Curiosity got the better of him, and he pulled it onto his boat. What he found inside would stay with him for the rest of his life. The suitcase was heavy, soaked, and smelled wrong. When he unzipped it, his stomach turned. Inside were human remains wrapped tightly in plastic garbage bags. The body was cut into pieces, the kind of dismemberment that seemed more surgical than messy. Over the next 10 days, 2 more suitcases surfaced in the bay. Each one held more body parts, wrapped the same way. It was methodical, precise. When investigators finally pieced the remains together, they identified the victim: Bill McGuire. His head, his torso, his legs, all cut apart like a puzzle. Who could do something like this? The answer: it wasn't a mob hit or a random killer. The truth was much closer to home. Melanie played the role of the grieving widow well. She told anyone who would listen that Bill must have gotten mixed up with dangerous people. Maybe loan sharks because of his gambling. But detectives weren't buying it. When they dug into Melanie's life, the mask started to slip. First, they found out about Dr. Miller, the affair she swore didn't exist. Then they found something even more damning. A series of disturbing searches on the McGuire's computer. Undetectable poisons. How to commit murder. Chloral hydrate. The same drug found in Bill's abandoned car. And guess what? A prescription for that exact sedative had been filled on April 26th, just 2 days before Bill disappeared. The prescription came from Dr. Miller's clinic. And the name on it? One of Melanie's fertility patients, except the patient had no idea it was ever filled. Coincidence? Or a carefully laid plan? Let's keep this chilling tale rolling, diving even deeper into the investigation, trial, and the haunting aftermath of Melanie McGuire's crime. Here's the continuation. Detectives retraced her steps in the days after Bill's disappearance. What they found painted a very different picture from the one Melanie was selling. Turns out, Melanie didn't just file a restraining order on April 29th. That same day, she drove over an hour to Pennsylvania to buy a .38 caliber handgun, in cash. A gun Bill knew nothing about. The murder weapon was never found, but ballistics showed that Bill had been shot twice in the head and once in the chest with a gun matching that caliber. Then came the surveillance footage. Cameras along the route from New Jersey to Virginia, near where the suitcases were found, captured a car eerily similar to Melanie's making the trip. Melanie denied everything, of course. She said she was home, taking care of the kids, trying to rebuild her life after Bill left. But there was one more piece of evidence, one that felt like the final nail in the coffin. In Bill's abandoned car, buried deep in the carpeting, forensic techs found microscopic fragments of human tissue. Human sawdust, the media called it. It wasn't just blood, it was flesh, ground up, tiny particles of Bill's remains, the kind of thing you'd expect to see after using a reciprocating saw. Detectives were horrified. Not only had Bill been dismembered, but it was done with surgical precision, clean cuts, no jagged edges. Melanie was a nurse. She knew anatomy. She knew how to cut without making a mess. And now it looked like she put that knowledge to use in the worst way imaginable. But one question still hung in the air. Did she really do this alone? Let's be honest, Melanie wasn't exactly built for heavy lifting. She was 5 feet 3 inches, barely 120 pounds. Bill, on the other hand, was 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds. So how did Melanie move his body, let alone cut it apart and stuff it into 3 suitcases? The prosecution suggested she might have had help. Maybe Dr. Miller, her lover, was involved. It made sense on paper. He had medical knowledge, and they were both desperate for a new life together. But Miller had an alibi. He was nowhere near New Jersey when Bill disappeared. Investigators looked for other possibilities, a friend, a family member, maybe even a hired hand, but nothing ever stuck. The truth is, we still don't know if Melanie acted alone that night. If she did, that might be the most chilling part of all. March 5, 2007, Melanie's murder trial began. The courtroom was packed, with media lining up outside every day. Everyone wanted to see the suitcase killer in the flesh. Melanie sat at the defense table, dressed modestly, hair neatly pulled back. She looked more like a PTA mom than a cold-blooded killer. Her legal team leaned into that. They painted her as a loving mother trapped in an abusive marriage, a woman who feared for her life. They blamed Bill's gambling, claiming he got mixed up with the wrong people. Maybe he was killed by loan sharks, and Melanie was just a convenient scapegoat. But the prosecution wasn't having it. They laid out every brutal detail: the gun, the sedative, the dismemberment, the suitcases, the internet searches. They called forensic experts, detectives, even Dr. Miller himself to testify about the affair. When Melanie took the stand in her own defense, she sobbed. She swore she was innocent. But her performance wasn't enough. After 6 weeks of testimony, the jury took just 14 hours to decide her fate. April 23, 2007, the verdict came in. Melanie was convicted of first-degree murder, desecration of human remains, unlawful possession of a firearm, and perjury. She showed no emotion when the verdict was read. On July 19, 2007, the judge handed down her sentence. No chance of parole until 2073. when Melanie would be 100 years old. The courtroom fell silent. Some people felt justice was served, others weren't so sure. Even now, questions still linger. Was Melanie really the mastermind, or was she just a desperate woman who snapped? Did she have help that night? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if she hadn't been caught, how far would she have gone to cover her tracks? Today, Melanie McGuire is locked away at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, New Jersey's only women's prison. She keeps a low profile. She writes health advice for the prison newsletter, tutors other inmates, and even advocates for prison reform. It's almost like she's trying to rebuild her life from the inside. But no matter what she does now, one thing remains true. Her sons, the boys she once cherished, want nothing to do with her. They're grown now, raised by Bill's family. They cut ties with Melanie years ago. To them, she isn't mom anymore. She's the woman who killed their father. And no matter how many newsletters she writes or inmates she helps, that's a stain she'll never wash away. The story of Melanie McGuire is a tangled web of betrayal, desperation, and horror. Was she a woman driven to murder by an abusive marriage and a forbidden love? Or was she a cold, calculating killer who planned every detail, right down to the last suitcase? The jury made their decision. But what do you think? Is Melanie McGuire the monster the world believes she is, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.